Have you ever felt like no matter how hard you try, some days just feel heavier than usual? As if an invisible cloud were draining your energy, leaving you with that unshakable sense of exhaustion you just can't explain. You're not alone in this. Sometimes, negativity seeps into our lives in such subtle ways that we don't even notice. It's not just about what happens around us, it's about what we allow in. The words we hear, the people we surround ourselves with, the thoughts we hold on to. I know how it feels because I've been there too. And let me tell you something. It doesn't have to be this way. You can take back control of your energy and protect it, no matter what's happening around you. Today, we're going to explore how to stop those energy leaks that unknowingly add to the emotional weight we carry. We'll draw wisdom from the Stoics, like Marcus Aurelius and Seneca, but also from other great thinkers who understood how to live with more lightness and purpose. Stay with me, because these 7 lessons might just be the turning point you've been looking for. If you've ever felt like you deserve to live with more peace, more strength, and fewer emotional burdens, this video is for you. I'm Gabriel, and here we talk about how to live better through deep, practical wisdom. If you haven't yet, I invite you to subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because what we'll learn today could change the way you face life. Let's get started. Let's start with something that might seem simple, but has a massive impact on the quality of energy flowing through your life, what you say, and how it shapes what you receive. Think about it for a moment. How many times a day do you complain, criticize, or just speak without considering the effect of your words? Don't worry, this isn't a reproach. We all do it, often without realizing it. But here's the thing. Our words aren't just sounds that leave our mouths. They're like seeds planted in the soil of our minds, and sooner or later, those seeds grow into our reality. Seneca once said, "The way we speak reflects the way we live." Our thoughts and emotions manifest in our words, but there's more to it than that. What we say doesn't just shape our own perception of the world. It also influences how others see us and how they respond to us. Constant complaints, unnecessary criticism, or simply focusing on the negative create a toxic emotional environment, both for ourselves and for those around us. It's like releasing a cloud of heavy energy into the air. Sooner or later, it comes back to us. But this isn't just philosophy. Viktor Frankl, a psychiatrist who survived the horrors of concentration camps, discovered that even in the most extreme circumstances, the words and thoughts we choose have the power to reshape our experience. He said that between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. What you choose to say in that space can transform not only your own energy, but also the energy of those around you. If you've ever felt stuck in a cycle of negativity, here's something practical you can do. Every time you feel the urge to complain or criticize, pause. Ask yourself, does what I'm about to say improve the situation? Does it add something positive? If the answer is no, try reframing your words, or simply stay silent. It might seem like a small gesture, but you'd be surprised at the impact it can have on your daily life. It's like redirecting the course of a river. Change takes time, but little by little, it transforms the entire landscape. Marcus Aurelius also reminded us that what we think and say tends to shape our reality because our minds feed on what we give them. If you cultivate a kind and mindful way of speaking, not just to others but also to yourself, you'll be building an emotional refuge for life's difficult moments, and life will return that kindness to you in ways you can't imagine, because in the end, what we give always finds its way back to us. And speaking of what we receive, this brings us to the next key point, one that deeply affects our energy, often without us even realizing it: relationships. Because no matter how mindful you are with your words, if the people around you don't share that same intention to be conscious of what they say and do, their negativity can drain you more than you think. Let's explore this in more detail. Now let's talk about something that isn't always obvious at first glance, but has a huge impact on how you feel every day, the effect of relationships on your energy. I'm not just referring to those obviously toxic relationships, the ones that feel like storms you can't ignore. I'm also talking about the more subtle dynamics, the ones that seem harmless but slowly drain your peace over time. Relationships are never neutral. Every interaction, no matter how small, leaves a mark on your emotional state. Seneca understood this well when he spoke about how the people we surround ourselves with can either lift us up or drag us down. But I also want to bring in Carl Jung's perspective. He believed that relationships are mirrors. What you see in others often reflects something within yourself, for better or worse. So when someone consistently leaves you feeling drained, frustrated, or discouraged, it's not just their energy affecting you. They might also be revealing something within you that needs attention. Sometimes we hold on to relationships out of habit, fear of being alone, or simply because we struggle to set boundaries. But every time you allow someone to cross your boundaries, you're opening the door to a constant energy leak. And the worst part? We often don't realize it until we're completely drained. This isn't about blaming others. It's about taking responsibility for protecting your emotional space. One powerful tool for this is what psychologists call emotional hygiene. It's a simple concept. Just as you clean your home to keep it in order, you need to regularly assess your relationships to ensure they bring something positive into your life. It doesn't mean cutting everyone off or being unkind. It's about paying attention to how you feel after spending time with certain people. Do you feel lighter, inspired, at peace? Or do you feel heavy, irritated, or exhausted? That's the signal you need to decide how much access someone should have to your life. Marcus Aurelius said that while you can't control others, you can control how you respond to them, and that includes setting clear boundaries. Boundaries aren't walls, they're doors. They're not meant to shut people out completely, but to filter what you allow into your life. Saying no when something disrupts your peace isn't selfish, it's self-care. And when you do it, you send a clear message, not just to others but to yourself, that your energy and well-being are a priority. This doesn't mean every relationship has to be perfect. All relationships have their ups and downs. But if a relationship has become a constant source of exhaustion, it's time to take an honest look at it. As we grow older, we realize that time and energy are finite resources. Investing them in the right people doesn't just improve your quality of life, it helps you maintain the emotional independence you value so much. And speaking of things that drain your energy, there's a silent, ever-present, and incredibly invasive source of negativity that we often overlook: technology and social media. Let's dive into that next. A few years ago, I went through a period in my life where I constantly felt on edge. I couldn't quite pinpoint why. I woke up exhausted, drained of energy, as if even the simplest tasks were a burden. And while I kept telling myself the usual excuses, it's just work stress or I have too much on my mind, there was something deeper that I couldn't quite identify. Then one day, almost without realizing it, I caught myself doing something I never thought I would, checking my phone in the middle of a conversation with someone I deeply cared about. That moment hit me like a slap in the face. I realized I had spent years trapped in a constant cycle of distraction, checking notifications, replying to messages, getting lost in social media. It all seemed so harmless, yet I had allowed it to invade every corner of my life. The worst part? I hadn't even noticed the cost. That constant exhaustion wasn't just from work or my worries. It was from allowing my attention to be scattered, fragmented, consumed by things that, deep down, had no real value. Once I became aware of it, I started observing the world around me. And there it was, the same scene repeating itself over and over. People sitting together at cafes, but glued to their phones. Families at restaurants, each member lost in their screen. Even in important meetings, I saw how notifications took priority over the people right in front of us. I asked myself, at what point did we allow something as simple as a screen to take so much control over our lives? Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations about the power of focusing our minds on what truly matters and avoiding the distractions of the world. He may not have lived in the age of smartphones, but his words are more relevant today than ever. We are surrounded by distractions designed to capture our attention at the cost of our peace of mind. Every notification, every endless scroll doesn't just take up time. It chips away at our energy, our ability to be present, and our capacity to appreciate what really matters. That day, after my wake-up call, I decided to try an experiment. I deleted all non-essential apps and set clear limits on my screen time. At first, it felt uncomfortable, I'll admit it. I had this nagging feeling that I was missing out on something important. But in reality, the only thing I was missing was noise. And little by little, something changed. I started feeling calmer, more connected to myself and to the people around me. My thoughts, once tangled and chaotic, became clearer. Since then, I've made it a habit to regularly reassess my relationship with technology. It's not perfect, but I've learned that protecting my attention is a way of protecting my energy. And when I do, not only do I feel better, I'm also able to give my best to the people who truly matter. This makes me think that in a world so full of noise, the most valuable thing we can do is take back control of our attention. Because in the end, what our screens are stealing isn't just our time, it's our lives. Now, if you've ever felt trapped in this cycle, don't worry, you're not alone. The important thing is recognizing it and making small changes. But this leads me to a deeper question. What happens when negativity doesn't just come from external distractions, but from something we carry within us? That's where the real work begins. If you're finding value in this video and discovering new ways to identify and block the negative energy that disrupts your peace and well-being, I invite you to subscribe and hit the like button. That helps me keep creating content that inspires a more peaceful and purposeful life. Let me know. Where are you watching from? I'd love to hear from you. Stay until the end, because lesson number 7 might completely change the way you protect your energy and find balance amid life's challenges. Let's continue. We've reached a fascinating point, how the negativity we perceive in others can actually be a reflection of something within us. This is one of those concepts that, once you truly understand it, completely changes the way you interact with the world. Epictetus put it bluntly, we are not disturbed by events, but by our interpretation of them. In other words, the way we perceive and react to someone else's negativity says far more about us than it does about them. Imagine this. You're at the supermarket and the person in front of you is complaining bitterly because the line is moving too slowly. You can feel that heavy energy creeping in. You catch yourself clenching your jaw, sighing impatiently, or even wanting to complain too. But here's the key. Why does their attitude affect you so much? Is it really their frustration? Or is it that you also carry a certain level of impatience that's now rising to the surface? Carl Jung, the great Swiss psychologist, called this the shadow, those hidden parts of ourselves that we prefer to ignore or deny, but when someone else reflects them back at us, we can't help but recognize them. Other people's criticism, bad moods, or negativity bother us so much because they strike a nerve that already exists within us, whether we like to admit it or not. But the good news, this isn't a curse, it's an opportunity. When you see someone else's negativity as a mirror, you can start working on what you need to heal within yourself. Now here's an interesting twist. Not all the negativity we perceive in others is a reflection. Sometimes people are simply projecting their own fears, insecurities, or frustrations, and it has nothing to do with you. In those cases, what matters isn't what they say or do. It's how you choose to respond. Marcus Aurelius, who faced constant betrayals and criticism as emperor, wrote, "If someone insults or harms you, remember, it speaks to their character, not yours." So how can we apply this in daily life? The next time someone treats you with negativity, instead of reacting automatically, take a moment to reflect. Ask yourself, does this have more to do with me or with them? If you realize their negativity is triggering something you need to work on, take it as a sign for growth. If it has nothing to do with you, let it pass, like the wind blowing past without carrying you away. This mindset not only protects you from absorbing negative energy, but also allows you to respond with more compassion and calm. Because let's be honest, we all have bad days. And if we can learn to handle other people's energy with grace, we can also become a positive influence on those around us. Speaking of influence, this leads us to our next key point, the expectations we place on others. This is just as connected to our inner peace as it is to the quality of our relationships. Let's dive deeper into that. Now let's talk about something that has an almost magical ability to trap us in a cycle of frustration and negative energy, the expectations we place on others. At first glance, having expectations might seem like a good thing. After all, expecting something from the people we love feels natural in some way. But here's the problem. When those expectations aren't met, we're left with a mix of disappointment, frustration, and even resentment that drains us emotionally. Seneca understood that the root of much of our suffering isn't what happens to us, but rather what we expected to happen. And expectations about others are a perfect example of this. We expect our children to call more often, our friends to always be understanding, or our partner to anticipate our needs without us having to say anything. And when that doesn't happen, we feel let down. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Did we actually tell them what we expected? Or did we just assume they should know? Let me share a story. Some time ago, a woman named Clara, in her 60s, told me something that completely changed my perspective on this. Clara lived alone, but she had 2 adult children who were always busy with work and their own families. She expected them to visit her at least once a week, just like they used to when they were younger. But over time, those visits became less frequent, and the calls started fading too. Every time she spoke to them, she felt the urge to remind them, "It seems like you don't have time for your mother anymore." And even though she said it with a smile, her disappointment was clear. One day, Clara decided to do something different. Instead of waiting and silently accumulating frustration, she picked up the phone and told her children directly how much it meant to her to spend time with them. Not from a place of blame, but from vulnerability. "I know you're busy," she told them, "but it would make me really happy if we could see each other at least once a month. Do you think that's possible?" What happened next was eye-opening. Her children not only agreed, but also admitted they hadn't realized how important it was to her. They had always seen her as a strong and independent woman. Clara learned that by releasing her children from unspoken expectations and communicating openly, she didn't just regain that connection, she also freed herself from the emotional burden she had been carrying. And this is something we can all apply in our own lives. Expectations are often like contracts we create in our minds without informing the other person, and when they don't fulfill this invisible agreement, we suffer. But this is where Stoic wisdom and practical psychology come in. Learn to let go of unspoken expectations and instead focus on what you can actually control. Express your needs without expecting others to read your mind, and allow for flexibility. Remember, no one is obligated to live up to the expectations you created internally. This doesn't mean giving up hope or dreams about your relationships. It means freeing others from the weight of your expectations, and in doing so, freeing yourself from unnecessary frustration. Because in the end, when you stop measuring love and connection based on what you expect to receive, you start seeing and appreciating what others are genuinely willing to give. And speaking of what surrounds us, this leads us to another fascinating topic: how the physical spaces we live in have a profound impact on our energy and state of mind. Let's explore that next. The spaces we live in are an extension of our mental state. Everything around us, from the order or chaos of a room to the objects we accumulate, deeply affects how we feel and the energy we experience each day. Seneca captured this idea brilliantly when he said, "True wealth is not in what we own, but in how little we need." This isn't just a philosophical principle. It's a practical guide to creating an environment that nurtures our inner peace instead of draining it. Modern minimalism embraces this same wisdom with a simple approach. Every object in your life should have a purpose or bring you joy. But what's even more interesting is that, beyond the physical, we also accumulate things emotionally. Old letters, unused furniture, decorations that mean nothing to us. All of these are, in a way, small burdens we carry without realizing it. Marcus Aurelius would urge us to ask ourselves, do we really need everything we own? Think of it this way. Every object takes up space, not just physically, but mentally. Every time you walk past a messy pile of papers or a closet full of clothes you never wear, a part of you registers it as unfinished business. It's as if physical clutter creates mental noise, a constant reminder of what's out of order. That's why decluttering and simplifying your space is more than just a practical task. It's a way to clear your mind and regain clarity. Stoic philosophy also emphasizes the importance of peaceful spaces for cultivating inner calm. Epictetus would remind us that external noise can amplify internal noise if we're not conscious of its influence. This doesn't mean you need to live in a perfect or empty space, but rather that you can transform your environment into a refuge, a place that supports your well-being instead of draining it. A powerful exercise to apply this idea is to look at everything in your home and ask yourself, does this serve me or does it weigh me down? If it weighs you down, maybe it's time to let it go. You can start small, a drawer, a shelf, a single room. And it's not just about getting rid of things, it's about creating space for what truly matters. When you reduce what you don't need, something incredible happens. You start to feel lighter, both physically and emotionally. Because minimalism, like Stoicism, isn't about deprivation, it's about focus. By simplifying your surroundings, you make room for what you truly value. Whether that's moments of stillness, meaningful relationships, or activities that give you purpose. And here's the interesting part. This approach isn't just for your home. You can also apply it to your mind by letting go of thoughts that don't serve you or worries you can't control. Because when you simplify your external space, you're also training your mind to focus on what truly matters. Which brings us to one final piece of the puzzle, something much deeper, something that fuels much of the negative energy in our lives. Let's talk about the fear of change. Change is one of the few certainties in life, yet we often face it with fear, as if it were an enemy threatening our stability. It's natural. As we move through life, we feel a deep urge to cling to what's familiar, to what feels comfortable. But here's the paradox. Resisting change doesn't stop it. It only traps us in a constant state of uncertainty. Marcus Aurelius put it perfectly. The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make of that change. Fear of change doesn't come from change itself being bad, but from the feeling of losing control. It forces us to let go of the security of the familiar and step into the unknown. But if you really think about it, life itself is a continuous process of change. From the moment we're born, we are constantly transforming, physically, emotionally, and spiritually. Denying this is like trying to stop time, and as you know, that's impossible. Stoicism offers a liberating perspective. Accepting change doesn't mean surrendering to it, but rather working with it, integrating it as a natural part of our existence. Epictetus teaches us that it's not circumstances that disturb us, but how we choose to face them. Instead of seeing change as a threat, we can see it as an opportunity to grow, to adapt, to discover new ways of living and being. In my own life, I've learned that fear of change fades when I approach it with curiosity. Instead of asking myself, what will I lose? I try to think, what can I gain from this experience? And it's not always about big external victories. It's often about small internal shifts that make you stronger, wiser, and more at peace. Because in the end, every change, even the hardest ones, prepares us for what comes next. So I'll leave you with these questions. What changes in your life have you been resisting out of fear? What would happen if, instead of running from them, you saw them as allies in your growth? And most importantly, what version of yourself is waiting to emerge on the other side of that change? Change is not the enemy, it's the path, and the sooner we accept it, the lighter we'll walk through life. We've reached the end of this journey, and I hope each lesson has given you new tools to protect your energy and live with more lightness and purpose. Life, at any stage, is full of challenges, but it's also full of opportunities to choose what we carry and what we decide to let go of. The key isn't to avoid difficulties, but to learn how to walk through them with serenity. Remember, the power to transform your environment and your energy starts with you. It's not about changing the world around you. It's about adjusting the way you perceive it, interpret it, and respond to it. You are the source, and when you take care of that source, everything else begins to align. I'm Gabriel, and if this is your first time on the channel, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the upcoming topics we'll explore together. If you've made it this far, it means you're committed to taking care of your well-being and building a more fulfilling life. Let me know who's here until the very end. Comment the phrase, "I transform my energy," and tell me where you're watching from. I'd love to hear from you and be part of your journey of growth. And finally, if this video helped you, don't leave without sharing it with someone who might need it. Sometimes, a small gesture like this can light the way for someone else. I'll see you in the next video, and remember, your energy is a gift. Use it to build a life filled with peace and meaning. Here's more content that will surely inspire you. See you soon.